The scream cut through the summer air like a siren. My niece, Lily, barely 17, was slammed against the hood of a police car, her face scraping the cold metal, all because her denim shorts were too short for HOA standards. And the woman behind it? Karen Whitmore, the self-proclaimed protector of community values. Phones came out. Neighbors shouted. But Karen just smirked, holding her phone up to record as the officer handcuffed Lily like a criminal. "This is what happens when you disrespect the rules," she sneered. Lily's trembling voice broke through the chaos. "I didn't do anything." Her mother collapsed to her knees. I froze, rage building inside me, because I knew this wasn't about rules. It was about control, power, and humiliation. But Karen had no idea who was watching, or that her cruel little show was about to reach the mayor's office. Hey everyone, before we dive into this story, I just want to know, which city are you watching from? Drop your city's name in the comments below, because I love seeing where all my viewers are tuning in from. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on that notification bell. Trust me, you don't want to miss stories like this. All right, let's begin. It was one of those bright, peaceful Saturday mornings in Willow Creek, the kind of neighborhood where lawns are trimmed, mailboxes shine, and the HOA thinks it owns every inch of your life. My niece Lily was visiting for the weekend, happy, carefree, and just excited to grab an iced coffee with her friends. She never imagined that a simple outfit, a pair of denim shorts and a white top, would turn into a public nightmare. Because in Willow Creek, there was one woman who loved enforcing rules more than living by them, HOA President Karen Whitmore. Known for her fake smiles and endless complaints, she had made life miserable for half the neighborhood. But that day, she crossed a line no one could have imagined. What started as a petty argument about appropriate clothing spiraled into a brutal act of public humiliation, an act that would divide the whole town, spark protests, and force the mayor himself to step in. So grab your seat, because what happened next wasn't just a story about power. It was about justice, karma, and how one girl's tears changed an entire community forever. The morning started like any other summer Saturday, sunlight spilling across the driveways, kids riding bikes, sprinklers ticking softly in rhythm. My sister Emily was setting up the backyard for a small barbecue. Lily had just come downstairs, cheerful as always, humming along to a song on her phone. She wore light blue denim shorts and a white top with pink flowers. Nothing revealing, nothing inappropriate. Just a normal outfit for a 17-year-old girl enjoying her weekend. "Heading to the cafe, Auntie?" she asked, holding her car keys. "Yeah, but don't forget your phone charger," I teased. "And maybe avoid passing by the HOA office." "Karen's out again," Lily laughed, shaking her head. "That woman needs a hobby. If only she knew how much truth hid behind that joke." Karen Whitmore was the self-appointed queen of Willow Creek, always lurking, always watching. She carried a clipboard like it was a badge of honor, and every resident knew one thing: cross her rules and you'd regret it. But that morning, Karen was already in one of her moods. Someone had parked too close to the curb. A recycling bin had been left out too long, and when she spotted Lily walking toward her car, her lips tightened into that signature disapproving smirk. She stepped right in front of Lily's car. "Excuse me?" "Young lady," she called out, her voice dripping with false politeness. "Where do you think you're going dressed like that?" Lily blinked, startled. I'm just heading to the cafe, ma'am." Karen's smile turned sharp. "Those shorts violate the HOA dress code. No resident or guest may appear in public wearing indecent or distracting attire." Lily frowned. "I don't think my clothes are indecent. I'm just going out for coffee." "You're setting a terrible example for the community," Karen snapped, pulling out her phone and beginning to record. "I'll have to report this." Lily looked around, embarrassed. A few neighbors peeked through their blinds. Someone even started filming from across the street. "Ma'am, please, I haven't done anything wrong," Lily said, stepping back. But Karen wasn't letting go. "If you don't comply, I'll have to involve security." "Security?" Lily's voice cracked. For shorts? Karen's expression hardened. You're disturbing the peace. Stay right where you are. Within minutes, a police car pulled up, not because of an emergency, but because Karen had called it in as a disturbance. She had claimed a rebellious teenager was refusing to follow community safety rules. The officer, a young man barely in his 20s, looked unsure as he stepped out of the car. Ma'am, what seems to be the issue? Karen immediately pointed at Lily. This girl is trespassing and disobeying community conduct. She's being disrespectful and confrontational. Lily's face went pale. I live here! My aunt owns the house on Maple Street. The officer hesitated, glancing between them. Okay, let's just calm down. But Karen cut him off. No, officer, I've dealt with this kind of behavior before. She needs to learn respect. Before Lily could respond, Karen moved faster than anyone expected. She grabbed Lily's arm, yanked her forward, and slammed her against the hood of the police car. The sound, a mix of metal and shock, silenced the entire street. Lily gasped in pain, tears welling in her eyes. Stop, you're hurting me! Keep your hands where I can see them. Karen barked, mimicking a police command as if she had authority. The young officer froze, completely unprepared for the scene unfolding in front of him. Ma'am, you can't do that, Karen shot him a glare. I'm a member of the HOA board. We have the right to enforce standards. That's not how the law works. Another neighbor shouted, stepping outside with his phone. You just assaulted her! But Karen ignored him, her face twisted with self-righteous fury. I will not allow trashy behavior in this neighborhood. That was the moment Emily, Lily's mom, arrived. She had heard the shouting from down the street and came running, panic etched on her face. Lily! She screamed, rushing toward her daughter. What are you doing to her? Karen turned, eyes blazing. Control your child, or I will have her arrested. Arrested? For what? For wearing shorts? Emily's voice cracked with disbelief. She's disrupting the community and violating decorum. The officer finally stepped between them, trying to regain control. Ma'am, please back away. This is not your jurisdiction. But the damage was already done. Half the neighborhood was outside now, filming, shouting, gasping. Lily stood trembling beside the car, her knees shaking. Her mother held her tight, whispering, It's okay, baby, it's okay. Karen, however, wasn't finished. I'll be filing a report. This entire family has been nothing but trouble. That's when I arrived. I saw the flashing lights, the crowd, and Lily's tear-streaked face, and I felt something inside me snap. I marched straight up to Karen. What the hell did you do to her? She disrespected community rules, Karen said coolly. We maintain standards here. Standards? I hissed. You assaulted a minor! Karen smirked. Watch your tone, sir. You're already on my list for your unpainted mailbox. That line, that smug little comment, broke whatever restraint I had left. You've gone too far this time, Karen. You think your clipboard makes you powerful? Wait till you see what real power looks like. She laughed, dismissive. What are you going to do? Complain to the HOA? I am the HOA. I leaned closer, voice low. No, I'm going to show this footage to someone who outranks you. The mayor of Willow Creek. Her smirk faltered. For the first time, she looked uncertain, because what Karen didn't know was that the mayor wasn't just a public official, he was an old friend of mine. We'd grown up in the same town, and he cared deeply about fairness and justice. As I helped Emily take Lily home, I glanced back one last time. Karen stood in the middle of the street, surrounded by murmuring neighbors and flashing cameras, her confidence cracking like thin ice. She had humiliated a teenage girl over shorts. She had assaulted her in broad daylight, believing no one would hold her accountable. But this time, the world was watching. And soon, the mayor would be too, because when you push an innocent girl to tears just to feel powerful, karma doesn't forget. It just waits for the perfect moment to strike, and that moment was coming. By sunset, the story had already spread like wildfire. What started as one woman's cruel display of authority turned into a viral outrage that no one, not even Karen Whitmore, could control. The video of Lily being slammed into the police car had hit social media within hours. A neighbor named Brian Parker had posted it on Facebook with the caption, "HOA president assaults teenage girl for wearing shorts. This isn't community. This is madness." Within minutes, shares poured in. By midnight, it had over 150,000 views. By morning, $1.3 million, people across the country were furious. The hashtags Justice for Lily and HOA were trending everywhere, and while the internet raged, Karen sat smugly in her perfectly polished kitchen, sipping coffee like nothing had happened. Her husband, Mark, scrolled through his phone nervously. "Beth, this is bad. They're tagging your name. People are calling for your resignation." Karen waved her hand. "Let them talk. They'll forget by next week. These social media people have no life." But what she didn't realize was that this time, people weren't just talking, they were organizing. The next morning, a small group of teenagers from the local high school stood at the entrance of Willow Creek with signs, "Clothing Crime," "End HOA Abuse." "We stand with Lily." Emily and I stood quietly across the street, holding Lily close as she watched from inside the car. Her face was still bruised, a faint red mark visible along her cheek. She hadn't said much since the incident, just quiet sobs and a broken whisper that night. Why did she hate me so much? I didn't have an answer, but I made a silent promise that Karen would never get to hurt anyone again. That afternoon, the local news arrived. Microphones, cameras, reporters, all wanting to hear Lily's side. Emily tried to protect her daughter, but the pressure kept building. So we decided to issue one short, powerful statement. Standing outside our house, Emily faced the cameras, her voice steady but trembling. "My daughter was humiliated and hurt because of someone's ego. No child should ever be made to feel unsafe in their own neighborhood. We just want accountability. We want justice." The clip aired on Channel 7 News that night, and within an hour, Mayor Thomas Greer called me personally. "Ezra," he said, his voice grave, "I saw the footage. That's unacceptable. I'll be visiting Willow Creek tomorrow morning. This can't go unaddressed." For the first time since the ordeal began, I felt a small spark of hope, but hope in Willow Creek had a way of being tested. Because that same night, while the neighborhood slept, Karen launched her counterattack. She gathered a few loyal HOA members at her house, the same ones who always nodded when she spoke, too afraid to challenge her. "We're being targeted," she announced dramatically. "That girl and her family are trying to ruin my reputation. We need to remind everyone that I was upholding community standards." Her plan? To flood the HOA forum with false statements, claiming Lily had acted aggressively, used profanity, and refused multiple warnings. They even posted edited clips, carefully trimmed to make Karen look like the victim. By morning, the HOA page was filled with comments like, "We support Mrs. Whitmore." Teenagers these days have no respect. Maybe she provoked it, but the truth has a way of finding light. Another neighbor, Mrs. Donovan, uploaded the full unedited video, showing everything. From Karen's first words to the brutal moment Lily's body hit the car, the silence before the slap, the laughter after no edits, no excuses, just raw cruelty. That's when public outrage exploded. Dozens of residents started resigning from HOA committees. Anonymous emails leaked from within the HOA office, showing Karen had been using funds for personal landscaping and decorative expenses. Local reporters dug deeper, uncovering old complaints filed against her for harassment and intimidation, all quietly dismissed over the years. By noon, the mayor's convoy arrived at Willow Creek. Cameras followed him as he stepped out. Serious and determined, Karen, ever the performer, strutted forward in her pearl necklace and pastel blazer, pretending nothing was wrong. "Mr. Mayor, what a surprise! If I'd known you were visiting, I would have arranged a tour." He didn't smile. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'm not here for a tour. I'm here about the assault incident involving a minor. Your neighbor, Lily Turner." Her smile wavered. "Ah, yes, that misunderstanding." He cut her off sharply. "I've seen the video. There's no misunderstanding. You physically assaulted a teenager and misused police resources." The crowd that had gathered outside murmured, cell phones held high, recording every word. Karen crossed her arms. With all due respect, Mayor Greer, the HOA has autonomy. We enforce our own standards. Standards, he repeated, his tone icy. You call publicly humiliating a young girl a standard? You called the police on a child for wearing shorts. Karen's confidence cracked. She was being disrespectful. Disrespectful? The mayor's voice rose. You're lucky her family isn't pressing criminal charges yet. I'm ordering a full investigation into your conduct. Effective immediately, you are suspended from your HOA duties. The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Phones captured every second as Karen's face turned red, her jaw tightening. This isn't over, she shouted. You can't just... But he had already turned away, walking straight to our house. Lily peeked through the curtains as the mayor stepped inside, offering her a gentle smile. Hi, sweetheart. I saw what happened. And I want you to know, none of this was your fault. You were brave, tears welled in her eyes. Everyone saw me cry. Sometimes, he said softly, the strongest thing you can do is let people see your pain. It reminds the world what's right and what's wrong. He promised a full investigation, not just of Karen's assault, but the HOA's entire pattern of abuse. Outside, Karen watched from her porch, trembling with fury as residents turned their backs on her one by one. For the first time, her clipboard didn't make her powerful. Her words didn't command fear. The very people she once controlled now whispered her name with disgust. That night, the HOA office was vandalized with sticky notes that read, "Not my community." No more Karens. Justice for Lily. And for the first time in years, Willow Creek felt united, not under fear, but under something stronger, truth. But Karen wasn't done yet. Beneath her crumbling pride, something darker brewed, a desperate need to take back control, because when narcissists fall, they don't apologize. They plot, and her next move would shock everyone even more. The next morning, Willow Creek woke up under the glare of television cameras. News vans lined the streets. Reporters were interviewing neighbors, and a large crowd gathered near the HOA office, waiting for Mayor Thomas Greer's press conference. For the first time, the perfect suburban neighborhood didn't look so perfect anymore. The picket fences and polished lawns were now a backdrop to something much bigger, a fight for dignity and justice. Lily sat on our porch swing, quiet, her knees tucked against her chest. She hadn't gone to school since the incident. Even though most people supported her, the trauma of being shoved and mocked in front of neighbors had scarred her deeply. Emily placed a hand on her shoulder. You don't have to face them today, sweetheart, but Lily shook her head. If I hide, she wins. That's when the mayor's car stopped right in front of our house. He stepped out, a calm but firm expression on his face, his presence immediately commanding attention. Ezra, he greeted me, shaking my hand. Emily, Lily, thank you for being strong. We're going to fix this. The camera zoomed in as he faced the reporters. Good morning, everyone, he began. Yesterday, this community witnessed something unacceptable. A teenage girl was assaulted and humiliated by someone in a position of neighborhood authority. Someone who forgot that leadership means service, not power. He paused, letting the murmurs fade. Effective immediately. The city is suspending the Willow Creek HOA board pending an independent investigation into misuse of authority, harassment, and violation of residents' rights. No one is above the law, not even an HOA president. The crowd broke into applause. Reporters shouted questions, but his tone stayed measured. Then, with purpose, he added, I've also spoken to the district attorney. There will be criminal charges filed for assault and for filing a false police report. That last line hit like thunder. From across the street, Karen's door burst open. She stormed out in her usual polished style, hair perfect, pearl necklace shining, sunglasses hiding her panic. Mr. Mayor, she shouted, forcing a smile as she approached the microphones. This is outrageous. You can't just take over our HOA. You're overstepping your jurisdiction. He turned to her calmly. Mrs. Whitmore, I'm enforcing the law. You crossed the line, Karen scoffed. I've given years to this community. All I did was uphold the dress code. By slamming a teenager into a police car? The mayor asked. That's not enforcement. That's violence. The crowd gasped, some residents whispering angrily. Karen's mask began to crack. Her voice rose, frantic now. She disrespected me. She mocked the rules. If people start dressing however they want, what will happen to our reputation? The mayor took a slow step forward, lowering his voice. Our reputation was ruined the moment you thought humiliating a child was acceptable. Silence. Cameras flashed. The clip of that moment would later go viral with millions of views and captions like, Mayor Greer destroys HOA Karen. Karen's hands trembled. You think you can take everything from me? No, Mrs. Whitmore, he replied coldly. You did that yourself. Then he nodded to an officer nearby, the same young one who'd been there during the assault. His face was pale but determined now. He approached with a folded paper and handed it to Karen. It was a summons for arrest. Her jaw dropped. What is this? Formal charges, he said. Assault of a minor. False report. Violation of civil rights. The crowd gasped again. Karen's confident stance crumbled. You can't do this! I'm the president. Not anymore, the mayor said firmly. Your reign is over. The officer escorted her to the police car, the same one she'd used to humiliate Lily. That irony wasn't lost on anyone. People pulled out their phones, recording as the so-called HOA queen was placed in handcuffs. Lily stood up, her voice trembling but strong. That's the same car you pushed me into. Karen froze, turning to look at her. For the first time, guilt flickered in her eyes. But it was too late. The door shut, and the neighborhood that once feared her finally breathed again. Later that afternoon, we met the mayor in his office. The walls were lined with community awards, but he seemed less like a politician and more like an old friend who'd carried too much weight for too long. He poured some coffee and sighed. I've been getting reports about this HOA for years. Complaints about intimidation, unfair fines, even threats. But people were too scared to speak up. Your video changed that, Ezra. Lily's courage gave them a voice. Lily looked up timidly. So, she's really going to jail? Likely, he nodded. But there's more. We're planning to reform how HOAs operate in Willow Creek. No more unchecked authority. Every action must go through a resident council. Voted on, not dictated. Emily's eyes softened. You mean the community will finally have a say? That's the idea, he smiled. And Lily, I'd like you to speak at the next city meeting, as a symbol of change. Her eyes widened. Me? Yes, you, he said. You reminded us all what courage looks like. She smiled faintly, the first real smile since that horrible day. Meanwhile, back at the station, Karen sat behind a metal table, stripped of her pearls and power. Reporters crowded the windows outside as she tried to justify herself to the officers. I was only enforcing standards, she repeated. The girl was provoking me. But the detective in charge simply pushed a file toward her. We've seen the footage, Mrs. Whitmore, and we've found emails showing you misused HOA funds. Landscaping, private dinners, even jewelry purchases under community expense. Karen's lips trembled. You can't prove anything. The detective leaned back, smirking. Oh, we can. You documented every transaction. You really loved your clipboard, didn't you? For the first time, Karen's arrogance vanished. Her perfect posture slouched, her hands shaking. The same woman who once ruled over lawns and fences now sat trapped behind cold metal walls, and outside those walls, something was changing. Residents began gathering at the park that evening. Hundreds of them. Parents, teenagers, even seniors who had once feared speaking out. They brought candles, posters, and hand-painted signs that read, We are Willow Creek. No more fear. Thank you, Lily. When Lily arrived, the crowd cheered. The mayor handed her the microphone, and her voice trembled as she spoke. I was scared. I thought no one would believe me. But you all did. You showed me that kindness is stronger than cruelty. And that one voice, even a small one, can make people listen. The crowd clapped, and many wiped tears. For the first time, Lily didn't feel like a victim. She felt powerful. She looked up at the mayor, who nodded with pride. This isn't just your story, Lily, he said quietly. It's our community's turning point, and as candles flickered beneath the night sky, Willow Creek, once ruled by fear, was reborn in unity and compassion. But behind bars, Karen's cold eyes stared at the news broadcast of the vigil. She wasn't crying. She wasn't broken. She was planning, and what she planned next would be darker than anyone imagined. The morning after Karen's arrest, Willow Creek felt different. For the first time in years, people walked their dogs without glancing over their shoulders. Kids played on the sidewalks without being yelled at for disturbing the peace. The air felt lighter, but underneath that calm, tension still brewed. Everyone wanted to know what the investigation would uncover. The mayor had promised transparency, and he kept his word. He formed a special task force of city officials, lawyers, and volunteer residents to audit every HOA document Karen had signed over the past 5 years. And as it turned out, her leadership was built on lies, intimidation, and greed. The first revelation hit like a storm. Over $48,000 had been siphoned from HOA funds into miscellaneous community improvements. But when investigators looked closer, those improvements turned out to be Karen's personal expenses. Designer handbags, salon treatments, private dinners at expensive restaurants, and even a trip to Florida labeled as a board retreat. Emails showed she bullied board members into silence. Anyone who questioned her was fined or reported for non-compliance. One message to a former treasurer read, "Either you approve this payment, or I'll make sure your lawn violation photos go public. Your choice." The entire neighborhood was shocked. People who had once feared Karen now felt betrayed, and ashamed they hadn't spoken up sooner. "I knew something was off," said Mr. Donovan, one of the oldest residents. "But we all thought fighting her meant losing everything. Turns out we already lost our dignity by staying quiet." Meanwhile, Karen was released on bail pending trial. The moment she stepped out of the courthouse, cameras swarmed her. Gone were her pearls and polished smile, replaced by dark sunglasses and a trembling jaw. "Mrs. Whitmore, do you have anything to say to Lily Turner?" A reporter shouted. Karen didn't answer. She just pushed past the crowd, her face tight with anger. Back home, her house, once the symbol of HOA authority, had become a crime scene of sorts. Spray-painted words on her fence read, "No more Karen rule," and "Justice for Lily." Inside, her husband Mark sat in silence, his face pale. "You should apologize, Beth," he said quietly. "End this before it gets worse." Karen glared at him. "Apologize to them? They turned on me after everything I built." "You didn't build anything," he replied. "You destroyed it." That silence that followed was colder than any cell she'd been in. Back at City Hall, the investigation meetings became daily events. The mayor insisted that residents be allowed to attend and watch the process live. Transparency in action. Emily and I sat near the front row every day, with Lily beside us, quietly taking notes. One afternoon, the city attorney, Ms. Clark, stood before the room and projected a slide showing Karen's disciplinary actions over the past year. There were 67 citations issued by Karen alone, all against families she personally disliked. Some were fined for improper window curtains. One family got fined $500 for having too many plants. Another case, a single mother named Tricia had been forced to move after Karen, accused her of running an unlicensed daycare just because she babysat neighbors' kids on weekends. Each file told the same story: control disguised as order, power disguised as community, and at the heart of it all, Karen's signature. "This isn't an HOA," Ms. Clark said, her voice echoing in the hall. "This was a personal kingdom, and Mrs. Whitmore acted as its tyrant." The room erupted in murmurs. Lily looked at me with wide eyes. "How could one person get away with this for so long?" I sighed, because good people stayed silent. But not anymore. As the investigation deepened, something unexpected happened. More victims started coming forward, residents from other neighborhoods run by Karen's friends. They shared stories of similar abuse, fake fines, and humiliation tactics. It became clear that Karen was part of a larger circle, a network of HOA presidents who manipulated their positions for personal gain. The media dubbed it the Suburban Syndicate. Mayor Greer ordered the citywide audit to expand, determined to dismantle every corrupt HOA in his jurisdiction. But not everyone was happy. That night, around 11:30 p.m., Emily shook me awake. "Ezra, the backyard!" I rushed downstairs and froze. Someone had slashed our car tires, smashed our mailbox, and spray-painted the words "traitors" on our garage door. Lily peeked from behind the curtain, terrified. "Is it her?" I clenched my fists. Maybe not directly, but someone working for her. We called the police, and the officers promised to increase patrols near our house. But it was clear Karen still had allies, people who believed her lies or owed her favors, and she wasn't done fighting. 2 days later, Karen appeared on a local podcast, The Neighborhood Voice, hosted by her longtime friend. A sympathetic reporter, she played the victim perfectly. Her voice trembled as she said, "I was only trying to protect our values. I made a mistake, but the media twisted everything. I'm not the monster they paint me to be." But that performance didn't last long, because midway through the broadcast, the host's phone buzzed, and his face went pale. Karen? There's breaking news." The screen behind them flashed live footage of an FBI van pulling up to the HOA headquarters. Agents were seizing computers, files, and financial ledgers. The banner read, "Federal Investigation into HOA Fraud Rings." Karen's face drained of color. What is this?" Her voice cracked as she turned to the camera, but before she could speak, the producer cut the feed. That moment went viral instantly. The proud, untouchable. Karen Whitmore caught mid-collapse on live television. Days later, the mayor called for one final town meeting. Hundreds packed the community center. The atmosphere was electric, hopeful, emotional, ready for closure. Lily sat in the front row, her head held high. Mayor Greer stood at the podium, smiling warmly. "After weeks of investigation, I can officially announce that the HOA of Willow Creek is dissolved. All remaining funds will be redirected to community projects, including a new scholarship for young women in honor of Lily Turner, whose bravery reminded us that one voice can spark real change." The crowd cheered. Emily broke into tears, hugging Lily tightly. But even amid celebration, I noticed something strange. Outside, a black car sat idling across the street, tinted windows, engine running. As the applause filled the room, the car slowly drove away, and in that brief flash of headlights, I could swear I saw her. Karen, watching. Her empire had fallen. Her power stripped away, but from the look in her eyes. This wasn't over. Not yet. The courthouse was packed. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted, and spectators filled every seat. The tension in the air was thick, the kind that presses down on your chest until you can hardly breathe. Everyone wanted to see the showdown between the woman who had once ruled over Willow Creek like a queen and the girl she had tried to crush. Karen Whitmore entered wearing a beige suit, her wrists stiff, her expression cold. Gone was the smugness, replaced by something sharper, desperation wrapped in denial. Her lawyers flanked her, whispering frantic advice as she kept her chin up, pretending the world wasn't watching her unravel. Lily sat just a few rows behind the prosecution's table, her mother's arm around her. She looked small but steady. The same girl who once cried in fear, now ready to face her abuser in a room full of strangers. The mayor sat nearby, nodding supportively. When the judge entered, everyone rose. "The state of California versus Karen Whitmore," the bailiff announced. Charges: assault of a minor, obstruction of justice, misuse of HOA funds, and harassment. Karen's lawyer stood first, trying to sound calm. "Your Honor, my client acted in accordance with HOA policy. She never intended harm. The incident has been exaggerated by social media and biased reporting." The judge raised an eyebrow. "We'll see about that." Then the prosecutor, a sharp, confident woman named Alyssa Monroe, stood and let the silence hang before she began. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case isn't just about an HOA president gone too far. It's about what happens when power becomes obsession. When someone believes that rules matter more than people. She walked to the center of the room and pointed, gently toward Lily. That young woman sitting there was slammed against a police car because of shorts, not because of a crime, not because of danger, because one woman decided her pride mattered more than someone's dignity. Karen shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Alyssa continued. We have video evidence, witness testimony, and financial records proving a long pattern of abuse, intimidation, and corruption. This wasn't a single act. It was the final straw in years of tyranny. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for, the video. On the large courtroom screen, the footage played, Karen's voice barking commands. Lily crying, the sound of the car hood, the horrified gasps of neighbors. The jury flinched. A few people in the audience audibly gasped. Lily's eyes watered, but she didn't look away this time. She faced it head-on. When the clip ended, the silence in that courtroom was deafening. Alyssa turned to Karen. Do you deny that's you in the video, Mrs. Whitmore? Karen swallowed hard. It was taken out of context. Out of context? Alyssa echoed. You mean the part where you physically grabbed a teenage girl, or the part where you smirked while she cried? Karen's lawyer jumped in. Objection. Badgering the witness. Sustained, the judge said. Ms. Monroe, stay focused. Alyssa nodded, her gaze never leaving Karen. Of course, Your Honor. Mrs. Whitmore, were you aware that the HOA bylaws contain no dress code policy whatsoever? Karen hesitated. Well, we were in the process of adding one. After the assault, you mean? Alyssa asked, holding up a printed email chain. Because according to this, you tried to backdate an amendment to justify your behavior. The courtroom murmured again. Karen's lawyer whispered urgently. Don't answer that. But Karen snapped, I was protecting community values. Alyssa's tone turned sharp. By abusing your power? By stealing HOA funds? By intimidating residents? Karen's face twisted. They were ungrateful. I did everything for that community. I kept it clean, safe, respectable. And in return, Alyssa said coldly, you destroyed it. The judge struck the gavel. Enough. Mrs. Whitmore, sit down. Karen's breathing quickened. Her image, the pristine, perfect leader, had shattered in front of the entire town. Then came the testimonies. Resident after resident took the stand. Mr. Donovan, Tricia, even the young officer who'd been there that day. Each story painted the same picture: intimidation, manipulation, and cruelty disguised as order. I was fined for a garden gnome, one man said bitterly. She called me lazy because I'm disabled, said another. She threatened to evict me for hanging Christmas lights, added a third. The judge listened, expression tight with disgust, and then it was Lily's turn. The courtroom went still as she walked to the witness stand. Her voice shook at first, but with each sentence it grew stronger. She told me I was disgusting, Lily said softly. She said I didn't belong here. And when I tried to explain, she grabbed me. I remember the sound, my face hitting the car. Everyone was watching, and she was smiling like she'd won something. She looked straight at Karen. You hurt me because you could, because no one ever told you no. But today, I'm not scared of you anymore. Karen stared back, her lips pressed tight, eyes glistening, not with remorse, but rage. When Lily stepped down, the jury couldn't look away from her. She had spoken the truth, and it echoed louder than any lawyer's argument ever could. After 3 days of hearings, the verdict came swiftly. On the charge of assault of a minor, guilty. On the charge of misuse of HOA funds, guilty. On the charge of harassment and obstruction, guilty. Karen's composure finally broke. She gasped, shaking her head in disbelief. No, this can't be happening. I was respected. I led those people. The judge's voice was cold. You led them through fear. You abused your power. And now you will face the consequences. He struck the gavel. Sentenced to 3 years in state prison and permanent disqualification from holding any public or community office. The crowd erupted in applause and relieved tears. Emily hugged Lily tightly, both of them sobbing with joy and release. Karen was led away in handcuffs, muttering under her breath. But this time, no one looked afraid of her. Everyone just looked free. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded around Lily and the mayor. "Lily, what message do you have for people watching this across the country?" She smiled through her tears. "That no one, not even the loudest bully, is untouchable. If someone abuses power, speak up. You're not alone." The mayor nodded proudly beside her. Willow Creek stands as an example now. Change doesn't come from authority. It comes from courage. As we walked away from the flashing cameras, I looked back at the courthouse doors closing behind Karen. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something rare and powerful, peace, because justice, slow as it was, had finally come home to Willow Creek. But little did we know. The final chapter of this story wasn't about punishment. It was about redemption. And how even in the ashes of hate, forgiveness can still find its way. Weeks passed after the verdict, and life in Willow Creek slowly began to heal. The fear that had once gripped the neighborhood was gone. People smiled again, kids played outside freely, and neighbors who had barely spoken for years began sharing meals, laughter, and stories on front lawns. The air felt alive again, honest, human, imperfect, and free. For Lily, healing wasn't instant, but it was happening. She started therapy, returned to school, and was welcomed with open arms. Her teachers had seen the story on the news, and even strangers had written letters of encouragement. She kept a small box by her bedside filled with those notes, each one a reminder that she wasn't alone. Some were from other teens who had been bullied. Some from women who said her courage gave them the strength to speak up against workplace harassment or domestic abuse. One night, she showed me a letter that made her eyes water. "Dear Lily, I'm 63 years old. I lived in Willow Creek 10 years ago. I left because of people like her. But seeing you stand up gave me hope that maybe someday my grandkids can live here again, without fear. It broke me in the best way possible, because sometimes justice isn't about punishment. It's about healing generations." The mayor kept his promise. The HOA was officially replaced by a residents' council where decisions were made collectively. No fines, no threats, just votes, fairness, and transparency. The first meeting was packed. People brought food, flowers, and ideas, and at the center of it all sat Lily, honored as the youngest council advisor in the neighborhood's history. When the mayor handed her the certificate, his voice cracked slightly. "This is for reminding us what real leadership looks like." The room burst into applause. Lily smiled shyly, glancing toward the crowd. "I don't think I'm a leader," she said softly into the mic. "I just think kindness should be louder than fear." That line would later appear on murals and t-shirts around town. Kindness should be louder than fear. It became the motto of the new Willow Creek. But not everything was simple. A few weeks later, Lily received an unexpected letter at our doorstep. No return address. The handwriting was firm, elegant, but shaky, like someone struggling to find courage. Inside, on a plain white sheet, were only a few lines. "I watched your speech on the news. You're braver than I ever was. I lost myself in control, and I hurt people I never meant to. I can't ask forgiveness, but I can say I'm sorry." KW Lily read it twice, her fingers trembling. "It's her, isn't it?" I nodded slowly. "It has to be." She sat silently for a while, staring out the window. "I don't hate her," she said finally. "I just feel sad that someone could have everything, a house, a husband, a life, and still feel the need to destroy others to feel powerful." And in that moment, I realized something profound. The real victory wasn't Karen's punishment. It was Lily's mercy, because hate can win battles, but only grace wins peace. Months passed and summer returned. The park once called Whitmore Commons was renamed Lily Turner Gardens, a space for reflection and community. The mayor invited everyone for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Children ran around, balloons fluttered in the breeze, and the air smelled of fresh grass and redemption. Emily held Lily's hand tightly as the crowd counted down. 3, 2, 1! The ribbon was cut, and applause erupted. Lily smiled brightly for the cameras, but then she noticed a woman standing far in the back, wearing a simple beige coat, sunglasses, and a hat pulled low. For a second, their eyes met. Karen. She wasn't supposed to be there, still awaiting transfer to a correctional facility. But she stood quietly behind the crowd, watching, not with anger this time, but with something else. Regret. Lily didn't tell anyone. She just lifted her hand slightly, not in greeting, not in forgiveness, but in acknowledgement. Karen's lips parted as if she wanted to say something, but then she turned and disappeared into the sunlight. Maybe that was her way of saying goodbye. That night, we gathered at home. The neighborhood lights twinkled outside, laughter echoed down the street, and the world finally felt right again. Emily served dinner. The mayor stopped by with dessert, and Lily played her favorite song, the same one she'd been humming that morning before everything went wrong. I watched her laugh, dance, and talk freely, no longer defined by fear, but by strength. She caught me watching and smiled. "Uncle Ezra, you okay?" "Yeah," I said, smiling back. "Just proud. You turned pain into purpose," she grinned, tilting her head. "Guess we both did." And in that quiet moment, surrounded by family, friends, and the warmth of a healed community, I realized that Willow Creek wasn't just rebuilt. It was reborn because one girl refused to bow down to cruelty, because a mother refused to stay silent, because a mayor refused to look away. Justice had been served, but more importantly, humanity had been restored. Weeks later, a journalist from the Los Angeles Chronicle published an article titled "The Girl Who Changed the Rules." The opening line read, "In a world obsessed with control, a 17-year-old girl from Willow Creek reminded us all that compassion is the strongest law of all." The article went viral, again, but this time not because of outrage, because of hope. People started calling, emailing, sending letters, asking how they could build their own residence council, how they could protect others from HOA bullying, and how they could make their communities kinder. It was more than a story now. It was a movement. And Lily? She just smiled, taped the article to her wall, and said, if it helped even one person, it was worth everything. That night, as I looked out over the quiet neighborhood, the same one that had once been ruled by fear, I whispered softly to myself, kindness should be louder than fear. And for the first time in a long time, it was. If this story moved you, take a moment right now. Hit that subscribe button and share this story so others can remember that standing up for what's right always matters. Comment below where you're watching from, your city, your town, and let us know. Do you believe kindness can truly change communities? Because every view, every share, every voice spreads one simple truth. Fear divides, but courage unites. This was Lily's story, and maybe it's ours too.